Hey, do you like horror in your games? Because I love when a game goes out his way to do things like psychological horror, and I despise when they do, the cheap one. Anyways, the horror that I like is the type that gives you this feeling of dread and anxiety with tiny things and not with cheap scares. It creates an atmosphere that it gets in your head, giving you paranoia, expecting that something might come around the corner at any second. But in reality, there's nothing there. Yet. And you're alone. And there's nothing coming for you. For now. That's why the sounds and the environment are so important in this genre. That's the type of horror that I like, and that's the type of horror that I think FromSoftware excels at, when it comes to designing sounds and enemies that give you this feeling. Obviously, spoiler warning for these games right here, so now you know, and let's continue. Every single one of these games has a moment that had me thinking my life decisions, man. Because when I'm playing a game where I'm supposed to be safe, and suddenly there is music like this on the background, I start sweating. Especially if you take in consideration that, except for Elden Ring, normally there is no music when you're exploring these worlds. Music is something that comes with every boss, but not with every zone. The first important factor that I want to talk about is the enemies. From DS1 to DS3, Bloodborne and Elden Ring, every game that I just mentioned has at least one enemy that gives me nightmares. And after playing these games many times throughout the years, I've noticed some things in common between them. Come with me. We're gonna make a list. I want to start this list with the enemy that I think is the more easy on the eyes, and that will be the Dark Dwellers from Dark Souls 2. As a nice detail, this is one of the few enemies in the whole series that fears fire, so that's a good one for you, Dark Souls 2. So, according to the wiki, this enemy is based on monkey spiders, and I kind of see it. The thing that gets me about this design is the long limbs and the weird face. This spot right here, in this house, is where I realized that I hate this enemy. Okay, so moving on to the next one. We have two enemies that I want to put in the same category, and that will be Centipedes. And I'm obviously not talking about the family-friendly ones that are in Elden Ring. I'm talking about the Celestial Centipede from Bloodborne and the Sewer Centipede from Dark Souls 3. I mean, just look at it. I don't even know where to begin with this monstrosity. Not only does it have long limbs, it has multiple of them. Okay, so this deranged looking ass centipede also commits the crime to be in this room. In the case of the Celestial Centipede, this one has an open chest with multiple teeth. If you look at the head, you can see that it has a flower with light. Honestly, I think this could be a cross between a centipede and an anglerfish. Really ugly stuff. In our next stop, we have the Wintern Lanterns from Bloodborne. As you can imagine, there's gonna be a lot of entries from Bloodborne in this video, due to this game basically being a survival horror. The Wintern Lanterns are amazing at setting the mood in the nightmare of Mensis. You can hear them sing throughout the mid-section of the nightmare, only to be found in a pretty precise jump. Seriously, how did they get here, man? The part of this design that creeps me out the most is the multiple eyes. That and the fact that they're singing. Also, that grab is terrible. Before we get to the worst one, I want to give two shoutouts. One is for the mimics, fuck you and your long legs, and two is for the golem looking ass from Dark Souls 3. The real name of this abomination is the Wretch, and honestly, comparing to the rest of the enemies of this video, it's not that bad. The thing is, the first time I saw this enemy, I didn't notice it was in the room with me. So after a while, I noticed two eyes, and then I looked closely, and he was just standing there, menacingly. So now that we're done with the shoutouts, we can move to the worst one. This is the one enemy I cannot stand. Everything about this creature disturbs me. I'm of course talking about the Chaos Eater from Dark Souls 1. This thing right here is an amalgamation of everything I hate from previous designs. It has multiple eyes, multiple teeth, multiple long limbs, and thank God it doesn't sing. Even listening to this thing gives me nightmares. And this room? Oh no. Also, this enemy is in Lost Isolate, so having to see this abomination every time I lose the bed of Chaos Roulette is just awful. Well, with that being said, we can now move on to the other important factor of this video, the sounds. As I mentioned previously in the video, besides Elden Ring, having music in a zone is pretty rare. Aside from the hub area of every game, you are in with the sounds of your own character, the environment, and the enemies. The first sound that comes to mind as a terrifying experience is going to be Yahar'gul, the Unseen Village. If you get killed by a kidnapper before killing Rom, you end up in this place. As you can hear, there is people chanting. And as you go outside, the music becomes louder and louder. This feeling of uneasiness I felt when I was walking through the streets of Yahar'gul is something that very few songs have replicated. The other zone on this game that left an impression on me was Upper Cathedral World. I have been in this place every run I play Bloodborne, but it was on my last run that I decided to change some things. I turned off the HUD. Also, I dropped the sound effects to level 4, leaving the music and the voices at maximum level. So, when I arrived at this place, late at night, and home alone, I was received by this music. I was suddenly tense. This place was already memorable, with the werewolf in the chandeliers and the brain suckers. I hate those enemies. But this was the first time I felt that I was in a scary, tragic place. This being an orphanage used by the Healing Church to experiment with kids. Also, I want to add, to close the Bloodborne section, that silence can be a very strong tool to put fear into the player. The one moment that I will always remember about this game is reaching the brain in the nightmare of Mensis. You are there, in the dark, just the sound of yourself, and suddenly, as you advance, you start seeing something, and there it is, looking at you, doing nothing. Bloodborne, you really are a special game. Moving on to something more recent, we have Deeproot Depths from Elden Ring. This is a place I remember fondly from my first run. The absolute dread I felt the moment I saw this arena and the giant corpse of Godwyn looking at me at the distance. I didn't want to get close to it. It felt like I was seeing something that should be kept alone. And when I finally got the courage to go on and fight the boss of this arena, I got received by P as champion. Honestly, I was kind of disappointed, not gonna lie. Especially if you have this arena. It was kind of wasted potential if you ask me. Finally, there is one moment I want to talk about to close this video. because it was kind of a weird one for me. I'm talking about reaching the Abyssal Woods in Shadow of the Earth and seeing this prompt right here. And just after that, you see the messages on the ground, and you get this feeling that there's something terrible in these woods. The amount of fear that these things gave me the first time, it was unparalleled. It's not something that FromSoftware has done before, right? So I had to stop playing for a little. My mind ran wild, not knowing what would be in this place. Maybe some giant monster was lurking around these woods, with some fucked up design. Maybe working like the snake present in Sekiro, but horror themed. So, when the time finally came, to my surprise, I was not received by some monster or abomination. Instead, I saw the Wintern Lantern cousin. That just... Okay, don't get me wrong, I like this part. I like the concept of an enemy that you have to stay hidden or you will die. That is something that FromSoftware hasn't done much. But the design was kind of meh. I guess I did this to myself, for thinking that it will be something terrifying. Okay, now we're done. As a conclusion, I think that the combination of the best horror enemy designs and sounds will be incredible. My dream would be a Predator-type enemy, like Mr. X from Resident Evil 2 Remake. Him just running around in a legacy dungeon or a zone. And if you defeat him on each encounter, he gives you a part of his set or a weapon. Working like Nemesis for the PS1 Resident Evil 3 on hard mode. So this way you have a reason to engage with this giant threat. Make him menacing, make him horrifying, and make it come at terrible moments, and that will be my favorite enemy from the game. Maybe this will be too much for some people, especially in a game where you can't pause, but if you're gonna put a little horror in each of your games, why not double down and create an horror-themed dungeon? Now, I want to ask you something. Did I miss anything? Feel free to comment down below. Anything that I missed, from enemies to sounds, I will be reading everything. So, thanks for listening to this random man on the internet. I am the Friendly Foe, and see you next time!